Welcome to Conscious Eye, living in authentic connection and harmony with self, others, and the world, featuring Ravi and Savitri. Good morning, Ravi.
Morning, Savitri.
Welcome. We are almost at equinox.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yep, it's coming up quickly.
yeah.
We previously talked about the calendar new year, which happened
We
January
did.
1st. Really doesn't have any astrological ties to it. We, in a previous episode, talked about the lunar new year, which is, practiced by it's the Chinese New Year, and I'm sure others use that lunar calendar to welcome the new year. But now we're coming upon the astrological new year, the equinox.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and there are a couple ways that in the Hindu calendar we look at that. Technically, spring started already. It's been underway. But when we look at how it lines up with the sun and the moon, that is happening within the next few days. Today, this afternoon, sun moves into Pisces, which is one of those markers for spring. And then moon will be moving into Ashwini Nakshatra. And then the moon is going to come into Ashwini Nakshatra on the 20th at 4 o'clock that afternoon. And that is where the sun and the moon come together in the cosmic calendar or the astrological calendar that you just mentioned.
That perspective of new year, of new beginnings, fresh starts. But it's also the equinox is a time of balance. So we think of balancing the external and internal worlds. We think of balancing, self with others, maybe. How we give, how we receive, all those things we often talk about. Uh, Things being on a spectrum,
Yeah.
polarity,
Mhm.
dichotomy. So, if you are feeling out of balance in any parts of your life, this is always a good time to kind of ground into a place of harmony for yourself. And this can be done, of course, through practices like journaling. You might, record yourself talking or just kind of create through uh, any kind of creative activity, whether that's dance or painting or something like that. But is this just a time um, to renew, reconnect, um, and also balance?
Um, the sun will be in the early days of Pisces, and the moon will be leaving Pisces. So there's a sense of transformation. And with Saturn in there, we have the sun and Saturn in combust. And that's going to be an interesting dynamic because Saturn is sun's child, sun's son. And Saturn being more of the world of shadow because that was from his mother, and Sun being more of the world of light. They really are diametrically opposed in the way that they do things, think about things, and inherently who they are. They both have aspects of keeping our time, and Saturn helps bring in karmic things that are out there for us from past lives that we've accumulated. So when we think about the sun and Saturn being combust, often any planet that's combust has a tendency to lose some of its luster. Often, depending on where it is in relation to Earth, it could be in front of the sun or on either side, if you want to talk about it that way, or behind the sun, and we don't see it. So Combust really has some interesting nuances, and going into those details takes a little bit more look at the individual charts and how that would influence someone. So, just in general, when a planet is combust, they lose their luster, they lose some of their strength and their energy because the sun overpowers them with light. So Saturn will be far deep into the shadows during this time, which means some of the restraint and constraint and pressures that Saturn bring to us will be, I won't say minimized, but let's just say um, maybe balanced a little bit more, if you want to talk about it that way, because we're talking about spring coming into balance. So that may fit there. So that'll be an interesting dynamic, and then we know we have Neptune in there as well.
Yeah, I was going to mention that because another transit that's occurring well and is in progress, Venus in Pisces. Venus has been in Pisces since March 1st and is going to hang out there until the 25th. So when you think about Venus as being, romance and idealism in
Mm-hmm.
Pisces, which is very dreamy, very can be about escapism, things can seem a little altered. So how we relate and how we experience not just intimate relationships, but anything that we love, our relationships with um like how we choose to live our lives, whether that's hobbies that we have, or relationships with family members, can all kind of be in under scrutiny now. And we may feel, if it is a romantic relationship or an intimate relationship, you may feel this pull to get more involved. You may have an idealistic dreamy kind of filter over that. And especially with Neptune, which is boundaryless, and
Mm-hmm.
Saturn, these boundaries are a little bit, like you said, just right now for the moment diminished. It's a good time to maybe practice some grounding and boundary setting, and just know where you begin and end in your relationships, in your
Mm-hmm.
relationship with others, or in your relationships with the things that you love in life, and kind of reflect on, is there a need to shape up some boundaries? Or if you've been holding, if you've been stuck in with all of these influences, Neptune, Saturn combust, is it an opportunity to maybe remove some barriers that need to be removed? All of this depends on, as you said, Savitri, what's going on in your personal chart. So how these energies that are influencing all, what they mean for you personally, is just going to depend what's set up in your chart. Again, like we've said a lot, and we'll say it probably again and again. This isn't about what controls us, it's what influences us. And we have
Mm-hmm.
that.
Mm-hmm.
We're all going to be impacted differently. I love how there's an opportunity for any transit, any impactful energetic event to be positive, negative, or neutral.
Right.
And
Mm-hmm.
it's dependent on, sometimes it'll feel more challenging to you, but you can still perceive it positively, negatively, or neutrally, depending on where you're at and how you choose to respond to.
Right. And where these things show up in your chart, because it can be anything from being very focused on yourself, who you are, and your internal world, to any of your relationships with the external world, from career to your significant others to, well, it goes around. There are 12 different options there. So, depending on where these things show up in the transits, that's where those dynamics are most important to take a look at and just be aware of. And we've talked about this not being predictive astrology. We come right to that edge where we talk about the energies as opportunities where they are there. And so, in some ways, someone might say, well, that's predictive. And well, we're showing where the energies are flowing, what's happening in an integrated cosmos, and where we fit into that integrated cosmos. And so, another thing about Sun and Saturn that I didn't mention that I really would like to put into play here is that we think sometimes about Saturn as being a scary planet. It's one that brings us the tough love, brings us the lessons. And I will say that I've had a long relationship, an enduring relationship from the day of my birth with Saturn, being an Aquarius ascendant and Saturn ruling Aquarius. The jumpstart was there. Saturn was definitely in babysitting mode from day one. And I've been through what we call sati sati, and I know that you're getting ready to move into the tail of that pretty soon. Um, but I've had three of those because I was born into sati sati. So with that showing up every X number of years, and I'll say I had three, we'll count the one that I was born into. You probably can guess how many years I am old. But basically, every 28 to 30 years, you would go through that process where Saturn goes over the moon. So you are having that happening in your chart right now, I believe, where Saturn is there over your birth moon. But the good thing, and you talk about it being positive, negative, or neutral. And so when we hear Saturn, you see it happen a lot. If you ever have social media posts that come your way about astrology, people just get clutched at the gut. The Manipura goes on fire when people hear the word Saturn. But when Saturn and Sun are combust, a couple things happen with Saturn in Pisces and Sun in Pisces. And you started talking about that, where it's a new beginning. But what happens is Sun will be dissolving away and burning some of the karma that is lingering, those fragments, those little loose ends that we haven't tied up, get dissolved away in Pisces as we do our practices and bring ourselves into alignment with those energies. If you choose not to, then that's a different focus. But should you look at the energies that are available to us and say, I think I'd like to address these, but these over here, not so much, you may look at Sun being in Pisces and thinking of it as an opportunity to really release some things and be able to start looking ahead, clearing out the Maya, the illusions, the confusion, and allow the dissolving characteristics and attributes of Pisces to wash it away, send it on, and the Sun will warm it, burn it, and steam it and help you
Yeah.
along with that. So there's a lot of karma that Sun may be working in our favor in Pisces. But to bring in Saturn, this is where some of that dynamic may show up, because that's Saturn's role, is to keep that karma in front of us until we resolve it. So just know that there are personality conflicts and friendships on lots of different levels. And we think of the planets as having those kinds of relationships as well, where they're friends or great friends or enemies, great enemies, or neutral. So they all have a relationship with each other in different ways. Yeah.
So, like you said, this is a time to maybe shift or cut ties in whatever way that you relate with others or something in your life. And this is a time with also it's where things are at Venus and Pisces. How do you want to feel in relationship with others, whether that's intimate partnerships or with family or with friendships or with a relationship with a job, or other things. And we all know if we don't work with this energy, like you said, Saturn is there to bring our karma and keep it in front of us. And you may not be listening to the things that it is putting in front of you. And for me personally, just to give a personal experience, I won't go incredibly deep into it, but something that kicked off, and this was just, it's a little different. You just mentioned Sati Sati though, but when that, got kicked off for me, it was a relationship with alcohol that had to change. I didn't, I'm sure there were other times in my life when I was nudged by the universe to shift my relationship with that substance, and I chose not to. And eventually the universe said, no, you're going to have to look at this in a very hard way and deal with it and take responsibility around it. If we don't listen to those nudges, we do get hit with the 2x4
We
of the
do. Hmm.
eventually. And so when it gets to that point, and we're like, why is this happening to me? Are we really taking these opportunities that are presented to us again and again, round and round these celestial bodies go? It is the study of light, Jyotish, the study of it's this the science of light and what lights up the areas of our lives that we can look at, we can contemplate, we can see what we maybe don't normally see. It's an opportunity to see ourselves, the parts of ourselves that are lit up by these influences, and resolve, work through, untie the knots, like you said, untie those or dissolve them so that we can evolve on our spiritual journey and
Yeah,
our human journey as well.
yeah. And we speak about the planets, as you said, the question, why are they doing this to me, or why is this happening to me? But when you think about light as being a source of life and energy and purification, we can also think about the planets sending energies to do it with us. And so it's an invitation to show up. I often think about planets as they come into the light that shows up in a chart for us, for our life at a certain time period. I often think of it as being on stage and not being the one up front at the moment. It's, say, as a musical, you're in a band or you're doing a theatrical performance and you're on the sidelines because someone else is in the spotlight. And then it gets to be your turn and the spotlight shifts over and suddenly it surrounds you. And I think about the light from the planets being a lot like that, where okay, it's your turn. What do you want to do with this? How are you going to show up? And that takes on a whole different perspective than feeling like you're being beaten with light waves that are a little bit rugged. It can be that way depending on how we step into the spotlight. And if we step in with courage, awareness, and understanding, and like you said, looking at ourselves and knowing what we're stepping into, and now I'm on the edge of that prediction again, and making a decision maybe is a better way to say it, where, okay, I have this here in front of me. I can decide what to do with that. Any performance, you can always step out of the spotlight and then step back in. So I always have that image that goes on for me when I think about which planet is taking its turn to put me in a spotlight at this time, and what does that mean for me? Because I'll respond differently to Venus, who, as you mentioned, is in Pisces, and Venus is busy now trying to ameliorate the relationship between Sun and Saturn, because Venus wants everything to be nice and comfortable. And plus, Venus has a lot of energy right now, being in his exalted sign. So this is an area of the sky where Venus is in the spotlight, so to speak. But I think about the difference that's happening in Aquarius. We were having the stellium coming through, and they're a little bit separated right now because some of them are in Pisces and some are still hanging out in Aquarius. So we've got Mars, Rahu, and Mercury in Aquarius right now. And we could think about the planetary energies and attributes and what they are bringing to us for an energetic spotlight. And Mars is quite different than Mercury, is quite different than Rahu. And when you think about having one or the other or all three in line at once, those energies, sometimes depending on whether the planets are friends, enemies, great enemies, or neutral, those things can shift the energies in a way. You know how you feel when you're with someone you really like and you're good friends. It's just easy and things just flow. And that's what happens when planets arrive in a location together. The energies just flow, and we benefit from that. When two people that are okay, maybe just acquaintances, but there's a little bit of distrust or not sure kind of behavior among whoever happens to get together, that feels uncomfortable. And that's what happens when the planets who are maybe enemies or great enemies are in a sign or a house together. That feels a little bit disturbing and chaotic. And so we respond to that. So that's something to consider as well. And, we go back to what's happening in your own chart. Well, these are things that we can talk about where we look at what planets were available to you in different houses and signs at the time of your birth. And are they friends or not? And so what does that energy look like specifically for you in that area of your
Right.
life? Yeah.
Right. I do like the analogy of being on the stage because you are that player, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the spotlight is on these different areas. And if how do we talked about the potentiality of, or the potential, I just like to make up words. We talk about the
That's okay. I
potential
love words.
of there being a positive, negative, or neutral response.
Mm-hmm.
And what is it that determines that? If we think of, being on a stage and there's these players that may get along and may not get along so well, your ability to keep that act going in the best light possible is to know your lines and to have gotten feedback and to have, maybe you got some coaching, using those tools. And so if we think of our day-to-day habits, the mentors and teachers that we lean on, the tools that we use in our day-to-day life, the decisions that we make help determine how we handle those moments on stage. And if you are using those tools and you get that crowd of actors with you that don't maybe get along so well and throw a few wrenches um, into the plot,
Right.
plot twist, right? We all get a plot twist every now and then. Your skill as an actor on that stage is going to be determined by how much you've practiced. And that's why we say, as on the mat, so, it is off the mat. As, that mat is your microcosm of the macrocosm. So it's the daily practices you do, the daily habits that you um, practice. What do we follow through on regularly that really can help? So it's not predictive so much as that, I mean, we know that if I do something once, if I'm successful at it once, doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to be perfect at it again. But if I'm successful at it 100 times, I probably have it down. Um, so it's how often we do those little things that help us handle those plot twists that do come in when these other actors are at play, or that
Mhm.
group comes in that maybe we don't quite get along with so well, or who don't get along with each other and might throw some things your way. So
Yeah,
I
it's
love
like
that
having a
analogy.
routine and knowing what to expect when you're on that stage, and then being able to improvise quickly if someone
Exactly.
forgets their lines or throws something in that wasn't part of the script. Those things are things that we learn how to adapt to and think on our feet, be able to respond. And so it helps build a more flexible mind and a more spontaneous response to the things that occur in our lives. Because during practice, I'll just say, every day is a brand new day for me. You know, my body shows up and says, oh, well, we did this for the last 4 years, but guess what? Today it's not happening. And then I'm thinking, okay, now what do I do? So, and sometimes
Right.
you're already in it and you have to figure out how to get out of it. And that's part of it is,
And that's
mm-hmm,
that improvisation. And the more you've practiced, the easier improvisation becomes.
right.
The more we can, um, we rewire our what, whether we look at it as neural rewiring or just how we choose our responses rather than reacting, we can we can guide that performance, if you will, back on track a little bit more skillfully when we're practiced at that. So even when we have to improvise, if we don't default into it's like that, you're singing along. I remember being in school plays and musicals, and you miss a note, and if you panic and break down, everybody knows. If you just keep on singing and going along, nobody's ever going to know. So that's I think such an excellent analogy in how we can, through our daily habits and practices, we can't change what happens to us. We can't predict what will happen, but we can certainly steer the ship by guiding our own responses and projections of
Yes.
how we project back that into the world. I think something else that's coming up, and I'll just touch on this. Jupiter went direct on the 10th. So
Mhm.
that is another another energetic shift at play, I think, at this time, which is such a powerful time in this post eclipse, still have that eclipse portal kind of through the 18th or 19th when we come to the new moon. Um, we're coming up on the astrological new year, and now we get this Jupiter, which is so expansive, kind of a return to hope, um, and and renewal. And I think that supports an energy of connecting to something bigger than ourselves.
Mhm.
You know? So when we think about how these energies influence us, it we're also, we're all impacted. So how can we use these energies not only to our own benefit, but to the benefit of all that we interact with, whether that's at work or in our communities? And how can we um, use these energies to help us project, be the lighthouse,
Mhm.
project that light out further into the world by
Yeah.
connecting to something bigger than ourselves? And also Jupiter too, as a protector. How can we cultivate a greater sense of inner safety and security when, especially in times like this, it feels so opposite? It feels so unsure and so unpredictable. How can we stabilize our inner world and increase our sense of safety and security in there, because that's really all that where it matters. We can't control what's outside of us, and we look at the chaos in the world right now that can be so overwhelming and so disheartening. So if we can bring that focus back to our inner world and cultivate our inner sense of security and light, um, nobody can take that from you. And when we're coming from that more grounded place of safety and security, we can share that with others. We can be that for others and create more of that in the world. If we cave to what's happening externally, we're just generating more of that chaos.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
to
You know,
be,
our last episode, we touched on uh, how grassroots um, affiliations and groups can help us start to feel that security and safety. Because we talked a little bit about it's difficult to come into an understanding and a comfort and become a participant in the external environment if we're operating from an internal world of fear and discomfort and lack of safety. So, the interesting thing you mentioned about Jupiter is that in addition to renewal, Jupiter is guiding us with wisdom. And by by the 23rd of March, and a little earlier than that, but just looking at that date, uh, Jupiter is going to be in a nakshatra called Punavasu. And Punavasu is where we find our connections, where we recognize that we have two homes. We have a home here on earth, and we have a home that holds us with a divine energy that we all can feel it. We can't touch it. It's tough to describe what it is, but I think if you look inside, we all can at least recognize that we will agree that something exists that connects us to an energetic outside of this physical form. And in that nakshatra, Jupiter is bringing the light and the karma around coming to Earth and feeling comfortable here. Because up to that certain point, Purnavasu is about discomfort of being on Earth. You want to be off Earth. You know that you have another home in another form or formlessness, energetic. And we look to that. We yearn for it. We search for it. And we have many names for it. A simple word is God, and all of the other words that are used to describe that energy. So with that, um, Jupiter's lighting that up. Jupiter's saying, yes, we recognize we have two homes, and you've been seeking and searching, but you're here now. Let's come to Earth, let's get grounded, and let's live the life to the fullest that we can. So I love that you talked about it being a renewal and new opportunities. And Jupiter also brings us wisdom. Jupiter is the guru, and that is our internal guru and our external
yeah,
guru. So once again, two homes, internal and external. And Jupiter's also involved with children and bringing that childlike quality back to ourselves. Uh, I'm not a big proponent of the inner child concept. I know a lot of people talk about that, but there is a sense of curiosity and awesome display of understanding of the world where we can see it with fresh eyes and appreciate what we are doing, what we have. And we've talked about gratitude. We've done an episode on gratitude. And so there's that. But I'm going to just hop across the sky for a minute back to Aquarius, because we started in Pisces, and that's where some of the action is now that Sun's in there. But we also have that action that is still happening in Aquarius with the collective.
yes.
And that is Mars, Mercury, and Rahu. And I mentioned those a little bit ago, but I wanted to come back and talk about those three real briefly in terms of what their attributes are and how their energies as friends, great friends, enemies, great enemies, or neutral might be. So we look at Rahu. Rahu has a tendency to be um, so all consuming of anything that comes his way that after a while it feels very chaotic. It's invigorating, I will say that. Um, I have pretty active Rahu in my ascendant as well. So, in addition to Saturn, I can talk a little bit about Rahu and how Rahu has a tendency to really bring some things in. You can have ideas everywhere. You know, you're driving, you have ideas. You're eating, you have ideas. You are talking to someone and fully engaged and still getting ideas because Rahu is always feeding himself with whatever shows up and being able to integrate things in a way rather quickly so that they become what feels like a fresh idea. We know there aren't any of those, but it feels like a fresh idea. So we've got Rahu in there doing that work right now. Okay. Um, he has kind of a knee jerk reaction to everything. You know, oh, I like that. I'll take that. Um, then Mercury, we talked about Mercury being retrograde for just a bit more. And with that, we have a little bit of modification. But Mercury is all about searching, researching, looking for answers, answering the question why? It's like a 6-year-old child. Why is this sky blue? Why are the leaves green? And that's that thing that Jupiter brings to us to be able to light that up. So we have a little bit of that going on in there. So we have Mercury likely questioning all of Rahu's new things. Well, why do we need that? What does that mean? Yeah. So the two of them are going to be having a little bit of dialogue and maybe not always friendly. Then we have Mars in there. And Mars is not about taking a whole lot of advice from anybody. Mars is going to see something occur and immediately respond without taking advice much from anyone else. Mars is about action. Let's get this done. So you've got Mercury and Rahu over here talking about what's going on in Aquarius for the collective, right? And Rahu saying, how about this? How about this? And Mercury's going, well, why that? Why that? And Mars is like, I'm out of here. I want to just get going. So when we think about how those three are going to create an energetic wave that we're going to be experiencing, we can each take it and figure that out for ourselves. Influence us in a way that depends on where Aquarius is, which house that is for you in your chart. So, yeah.
And I, there is that influence on the collective as well, with Aquarius being
Mm-hmm.
the collective. So we can see that going on maybe in some ways in the greater, you know, our greater communities and collective globally. I think, we're seeing a lot of
Mm-hmm.
that wave. And we are still in that eclipse portal as, until the next new moon. I just kind of wanted to circle back to that because it is a time with all of this going on, and we can see, I want to encourage folks, who may be listening to not take this each, of our episodes as this is, a one and done, or I missed it. I can't,
Right.
be a part of this energy. It's really helpful to go back and, even if you didn't, check in with us yet on the new year, the lunar new year, go back and listen and kind of get a sense for where your energy was at that time or what you were feeling or going through. And by, going back and listening to those previous episodes may give you a sense of the patterns that play out in your life. So that's the beauty of, using this science of light, this Jyotish, this astrology, as a lens of understanding life. It's not just for the moment. We can see patterns. This is about cycles and transits, and it happens again and again. So just because you may have missed something doesn't mean it can't be helpful to go back and listen to it and maybe use it in your life today and use this and think forward. It can help you kind of determine how you want to discern your way forward. too. So it's not just, this in the moment and then poof, it's gone and I don't know what to do with this
Right.
energy. I mean,
Hmm.
it's very influential over time. So I just wanted to get that out because we're still in that eclipse portal. And if there's anything that you're hanging on to that you just have to be right about and you're not going to budge on, or that you want to control and see it, turn out a specific way, really consider stepping back from that, loosening your grip on that, letting go of that a little bit, or else you may find that the universe will do that for you in ways that aren't so pleasant or comfortable. The more that we can deal with energies on the subtle level, the less harmful they are to us physically, or in more dense ways. If I didn't listen to a subtle, nudging for 20 years and it came about in a very real, impactful way, physically, emotionally, mentally, really impacted how I lived my day-to-day life. So if we can really tune into our intuition and pay attention to what is going on around us, we can shift with those energies when they're very subtle and aren't going to be so harsh if we don't tune in and listen to our intuition. And then that can pave the way for just a more pleasant path forward. And it's not that I don't want to give the impression that challenges aren't beneficial.
Hmm.
Life sometimes is painfully beautiful. And those things, those valleys that we go through, maybe we never want to go through it again, but we can still see the beauty in it and appreciate it for what it was. So if you are in a spot where that feels very low or feels, if you're hurting, sometimes it's just a matter of, okay, what, if I let go of this, if I just let go of the expectation or the outcome, what could I flow into? And this isn't still, we're in that place of opportunity to really shift big, especially like we said, with all these influences in our relationships, and the things that we love and the things that we value, and the things that bring us joy. So don't forget to tap into and tune into what feels good. This is a time to determine, how do I want to feel in my relationships?
Hmm.
How do I want to feel in the work I engage with? How do I want to feel in the communities that I'm a part of? If that's not feeling good to me, can I let go of the desire to control and change that? Can I step into something new? It's scary. Can I step away from that and find something new that feels good, that feels more in alignment? And that sometimes, we think we want to change what we're in so that it feels better, when really what we could do is let it go and perhaps something new will flow in.
Yeah. Last night I had a client that I was, well, doing the chart for this person, and the ascendant, this individual's ascendant, is in Ardra, which sometimes is seen as being exactly what you are describing, where it's painfully beautiful. And so Ardra brings the storm, brings the fierceness. Um, the end result is purification. It's that opportunity after a storm where the earth smells fresh. You can smell it. The green in the plants is just radiant. Everything is glowing. The storm was rugged. I mean, it really tries to do you in sometimes. This individual came back as we were talking about Ardra, and I may have described it a little bit more intensely than I did with that person because we talked through it for a longer period of time. And the response that I got was, that's just like me. I have these intense feelings and high emotions of being, um, as the individual has a Buddhist perspective, I take on the suffering. And then I do something with it. I create art, I paint, I write, and then I have something that has brought that into form that I can look at it, remember it, but it's no longer inside of me. And when you said painfully beautiful, I had to share that because that was such a wonderful way to talk about going through a storm and being able to create something beautiful and stunning for duration.
And that's such a good, I love that reminder. And that is, it's such a supported time for creating, whether it's going out and dancing or sitting down and journaling or, maybe picking up a hobby of drawing or just, something, I don't know, even crocheting, something where you are working through that energy
Mm-hmm.
and like you said, getting it out so that it no longer lives in you and you can look at it and go, oh, that's the product of me processing and working through this.
Yeah.
Um,
You know, one thing about that is that's so interesting is that you just described the environment of Gemini. You know, very creative. It's where the humanities live, and Ardra is aligned with Gemini. So
well, and that's where Jupiter is making its,
coming out
direct
of that.
path.
Hmm.
And yeah,
Hmm.
so it's all tied together, which is why, I hope our listeners are really tuning into that. There's so much more than just our sun sign that we think of, I'm a this or I'm a that. This is really about that map that you're given and now in this present day, how can you use that map to move forward given what's being lit up and what's going on?
Yes.
Um,
You know, you said something earlier too about, let's not just look at the eclipse and it's done, poof, it's gone. And we've talked a lot about how this is a snapshot, but it's an integrated view of something. And you just mentioned crocheting, and I had taken a quick note. It's like knitting or it's like weaving, where you have something that comes in, creates a fabric. And I've talked about the fabric that the nodes provide to us, probably on several of our episodes. But create that fabric, be it crocheting or knitting or weaving. And then whatever else happens builds on that. So that fabric is always holding us in place, that energetic fabric. And
yeah.
we can go out
You
and
get to
get.
be the weaver, the
Mhm.
creator of reality. We don't have to sit back in fear and panic and, you know, be frozen and allow others to weave that, we can create our own, fabric of the universe that we want
Right.
to live
Yeah.
in.
Yeah. And the snapshot in time that when you tune in to an astrologer or you read something about a particular transit, it feels like that is going to be happening, and then once it's happening, it's over. What it is it's just building on what's already there and adding to the ambience, adding to the attributes, adding to the energies that we experience. So in some ways, I guess it's kind of like the nodes are the foundation of a building, and each transit and thing that happens during your life creates the multi-floored structure above that foundation. So we're always standing on the energy of the nodes, Rahu and Ketu, and the transits help us navigate and create new experiences above that. Yeah.
And we'll be next talking about more practical applications of how we can work with this energy and really use it and implement it in our day-to-day lives too.
Yes.
So stick with us next week.
Yes.
And
So
and
thank
and
you.
do yeah, return to previous episodes. They're not outdated. It can be so helpful to go back and think, just reflect on maybe what was going on in your life with your energy more around the time of the eclipse or the lunar new year. Or even if you think back a little further to, winter solstice. So you can go back and listen to these episodes and see how you have progressed to this point and how those transits maybe have been influencing you and continue to meet up with us here each week and discern your way forward.
Yeah. Well, I'm about ready for another cup of coffee, so it's been a morning.
So, so, but that was a lovely conversation. I really appreciate your insights. That was
And I'm enjoying
got some
your
things to think
insights as well. So I hope everyone out there got a little more informed about Vedic astrology, Jyotish, and what that might mean in your life.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us. Don't forget to share a comment or anything that you've noticed that's been going on. What patterns are playing out for you? What are some things that you can see yourself resolving or dissolving? And then, of course, join us here next week and we'll be talking about practical applications. And join us every week just because we love doing this and
Yeah, we
hope you'll
do.
see you
Yeah.
again.
Yeah. Namaste.